So a frail old man has been causing meltdowns in mighty China.
China is upset by the Dalai Lama's clear stand on his succession.
Last part about authority was more of a message to China, which has been locked in a long and bitter feud over control of the Dalai Lama's replacement.
So that's the latest update coming in, a clear warning in a way that China has now tried to give, completely rattled by India's strong message on Dalai Lama's succession.
China is particularly concerned about how the next Dalai Lama will be chosen, because this one old man is preventing China from cementing its legitimacy over Tibet. So in today's video, let's find out why these meltdowns are happening, why China is so concerned over Dalai Lama's latest statements, and how Tibet can still hope and dream as long as the Dalai Lama is free. So recently, two incidents made China angrier than a groyper who sees an Indian making more money than them. The first was Prime Minister Modi wished the Dalai Lama on his 90th birthday. Right after that, China got very triggered and warned India about its stand on Tibet. Let's just hope Pakistan isn't feeling too jealous about watching China's possessiveness about Tibet. And the second thing that happened is that Indian MPs from all over the political spectrum, from many different parties, passed a resolution that they want the Dalai Lama to get the Bharat Ratna, which is the highest civilian award in India. They also want him to address the parliament. This move shows support for one of the most important cultural figures in Tibet and probably the most important figure of Tibetan Buddhism. And China is very angry about this decision. And to understand why China is so angry about this, we need to learn a little bit more about Dalai Lama and Tibetan Buddhism. See, the Dalai Lama isn't elected or appointed. So a bit like Rahul Gandhi, right? Yes, but no. This is a bit more serious. He has a bit more importance. He is believed to be the reincarnation of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion. A Bodhisattva is someone who has been awakened or is on the path of awakening and has vowed to help all living beings achieve enlightenment. They postpone their own final liberation or nirvana or moksha in order to guide others towards nirvana. In Tibetan Buddhism, the Dalai Lama isn't just a person. He's what they call a tulku, a spiritual guide who chooses rebirth to help others. He chooses to be reborn again and again for the sake of others' enlightenment. The current Dalai Lama comes from a line of Dalai Lama stretching back centuries. This process has been an organic process and has been in the hands of Tibetan culture for centuries, until the 20th century.
The Chinese forces marching upon their country were not an army of conquerors, but an army of liberation from Western imperialism.
When Chinese army entered 1950 in the Tibetan area, the Chinese army already crushed around 7,000 to 8,000 Tibetan soldiers.
And so obviously after this invasion, China believes that it should be in charge of the process of finding the most compassionate spiritual leader that guides millions towards enlightenment. Because when you think of compassion and humility, the first thing that comes to mind is the Chinese Communist Party.
And we don't really know what's happening to them. And people have to go in them. They don't have a choice. They're separated from their families.
So the current Dalai Lama, the 14th in line, was found when he was 2 years old. Monks allegedly searched for him using visions, dreams, and sacred signs. And for some people, this might be superstition. But for Tibetans, this process is extremely sacred. It's a link between generations, between the physical and the spiritual. It is not a government job opening, and yet the Chinese Communist Party wants to treat it like one. They're not happy with the Dalai Lama because he continues to defy the CCP and speak up for Tibet and Tibetans. The Dalai Lama has spent his life in exile, living in Dharamshala, India, after fleeing Tibet in 1959 during a brutal Chinese military crackdown. Since then, he's traveled the world, preaching peace and winning the Nobel Peace Prize. And in my opinion, this is probably the correct way of winning the Nobel Peace Prize, not the way Trump has been following it, where first he asks for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, they should give me the Nobel Prize for Rwanda. Has received the Nobel Prize for his writing about Donald Trump and what Donald Trump did. I say, what about me? I don't get it, but that's one of those things.
And then he does this.
They dropped the bombs and somebody said, skedaddle.
This case, Iran, that if you do anything to harm this person, we are going to blow your largest cities and the country itself. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat. Because I think we would have been good with Iran. I don't want to do anything bad to Iran. Large sections of the Middle East. I mean, look at the death and destruction that's taken place.
And none of this would have happened if I were president.
I mean, this isn't really a request, it's a shakedown. This is something you would expect to see in the Godfather movies, where they ask you politely and then put a decapitated horse head in your bed to make sure that you understood. But the reason the Dalai Lama is scary to the CCP is because the people of Tibet actually believe in him. They trust him. They revere him. And that's a power China simply has not been able to buy, build, or bully into existence. He is potentially the biggest roadblock in their plan, because China has really struggled to assert their legitimacy over Tibet, because China and Tibet for centuries have been two very distinct cultures and countries. During the 7th and 9th centuries, Tibet emerged as a powerful empire, in fact, that often rivaled Tang China militarily and diplomatically. Tibetan forces even captured Chang'an, present-day Xi'an, installing a puppet emperor, an event recorded on stone pillars in both capitals. China and Tibet then signed a treaty affirming mutual respect, recognizing the Yangtze as Tibetan territory's western boundary and the Yellow River as China's. The agreement enshrines sovereignty for both, not subordination. And then in 1950, it all changed when China showed up and invaded Tibet. During the invasion, they destroyed thousands of Tibetan monasteries. Under their Maoist crusade, they even had a plan to assassinate the Dalai Lama, but luckily, the Dalai Lama escaped to India by disguising himself. And now I'll show you how desperate China is to control Tibet, because in 1995, the Dalai Lama declared a 6-year-old boy as the 11th Panchen Lama. Now, the Panchen Lama is an ancient religious leader in Tibetan Buddhism. He's like a teacher or a guide, especially for the Dalai Lama, who's more well known. The Dalai Lama and the Panchen Lama are like spiritual partners. When a Dalai Lama dies, the Panchen Lama helps find the next Dalai Lama, and when the Panchen Lama dies, the Dalai Lama helps find the next Panchen Lama. So they help each other in keeping the tradition going. But again, this is an organic process deeply rooted in Tibetan culture. But when this child was appointed as the next Panchen Lama by the Dalai Lama, in response, the Chinese Communist Party kidnapped that child and his entire family, making the Panchen Lama the world's youngest political prisoner, and just completely disappeared him and his entire family. Instead, they appointed their own version, a state-approved Panchen Lama. This brazen intervention demonstrates China's Order No. 5 policy, which grants the Communist Party control over the reincarnation process of senior Tibetan lamas. The CCP now requires that all reincarnations be identified in China and approved through a golden urn ceremony overseen by Chinese authorities. So the Chinese Communist Party's desire to control the selection of the next Dalai Lama and Panchen Lama represents much more than religious interference. It constitutes a calculated strategy to legitimize Chinese authority over Tibet through spiritual control. This effort stems from Beijing's understanding that religious authority forms the cornerstone of Tibetan identity and resistance to Chinese rule. And the goal of the Chinese Communist Party here is to prioritize loyalty to the Chinese Communist Party over Tibetans' own culture and religion. Tibet's vast mineral wealth also provides another powerful motivation for Chinese control. Tibet sits atop some of the world's most valuable mineral deposits. Recent satellite images from Driru County reveals extensive mining operations with new roads constructed specifically for mineral transportation. The Saidam Basin alone is estimated to be worth $100 billion, containing significant lithium deposits crucial for battery manufacturing. China's control over Tibet has become particularly strategic given the global transition to renewable energy. Tibet's lithium resources are essential for China's dominance in the global battery supply chain, where Chinese companies control 75% of global battery manufacturing capacity. And while Chinese official statistics claim impressive economic growth for Tibet, this development primarily benefits Han Chinese settlers rather than Tibetans themselves. Since the early 2000s, a torrent of Chinese Han settlers have poured into the Tibet Autonomous Region, aided by major infrastructure projects like the Chengdu-Lhasa Railway. The Han share jumped from 8.2% in 2010 to 12.2% in 2020, which was an 80% increase in a decade. In Lhasa, nearly 40% of residents are now Han Chinese. Some estimates even suggest 50 to 60%, especially in urban zones, which means the capital of Tibet, the heart of Tibet, is now majority Han Chinese. These settlers receive massive incentives like better salaries, housing, fast-track urban hoku, designed to shift people. Nearly 1 million rural Tibetans are slated to be relocated by the end of 2025. Homes demolished, livelihoods uprooted. Mandarin is now the official language of instruction even in primary schools, disbanding the unified Tibetan curriculum. Tibetan is marginalized in official settings, in business, administration, media. Mandarin dominates in all of these platforms. Tibetan teachers are laid off while new Chinese textbooks denounce the Dalai Lama. However, Tibetan Buddhism's institutional strength and international support network and continued veneration for the Dalai Lama Lama provide ongoing resistance infrastructure to the Tibetans, where the Tibetans simply refuse to give in. And as long as the Dalai Lama is free, the Tibetans have hope. The Chinese obviously have not let up. They've destroyed thousands of monasteries, they've banned the Tibetan flag, they've erased Tibetan language, and have even banned pictures of the Dalai Lama. And so on his 90th birthday, the Dalai Lama made a bold statement against China. He said that his next reincarnation will not take birth in China or occupy Tibet. Instead, it will happen in a free country like India. Now just wait a second, Mr. Dalai Lama. You're such a wise man, you're 90 years old, and you still don't know that according to YouTubers, India is not a free country?
India's growing crackdown on dissent, including farmers' protests, internet shutdowns, online censorship, and the jailing of activists, is ringing authoritarian alarm bells. Is democracy being dismantled in Narendra Modi's India?
You need to educate yourself, sir. Anyways, a few days earlier, another video of the Dalai Lama was released with the same message. In that speech, he also named Bhutan, Nepal, and Mongolia as free countries like India where the new Dalai Lama could emerge. The Dalai Lama thus made a strong statement that directly challenges China's 2007 religious law, which states that every Dalai Lama reincarnation must get the Chinese government's approval. The Dalai Lama statement is seen as a big revolt against this Chinese interference in Tibetan affairs. China has obviously reacted very angrily, and ironically, the Chinese government is now trying to teach the Dalai Lama, the most important religious figure in Tibet, about Tibetan religious culture and traditions. This is like when Gordon Ramsay was in Thailand trying to show a Thai chef how a Thai dish called a pad Thai is made.
First, what do you want to know from me? Ask me.
Well, how is it? Oh no, look at that face.
This is not pad Thai at all.
This is not pad Thai? No.
Pad Thai have to be sweet, sour, and salty.
I think that doesn't taste too bad. It's not perfect.
For you, but not for me.
Just chef's kiss.
Well, well, well. How the turntables...
China even got upset with Prime Minister Modi for wishing the Dalai Lama a happy birthday. Meanwhile, China supports terrorists like Sajid Mir and Rauf Asghar in the UN, provides weapons and funding to actual terrorist regimes like Pakistan, but they draw the line over an old monk who spent his life spreading peace and won a Nobel Peace Prize. This is as ironic as Pakistan complaining at the UN about Islamophobia, but then pulling their pants down and bending over a barrel for the CCP that is destroying mosques all over China, banning all Islamic clothing, and throwing over 1 million Muslims into concentration camps. I mean, there's lame, there's pathetic, and then there's Pakistan. So let's talk about India for a moment, because India gave the Dalai Lama asylum in 1959. They allowed Tibetans to build a government in exile in India. They protected the Dalai Lama's life and his voice. And whenever it is that the next reincarnation happens, whether the reincarnation happens in India or somewhere else, India will be on the spot. Will they support the spiritual process, or will they get bullied by the CCP into silence? What about the rest of the world? Because remember, as long as the Dalai Lama is free, the Tibetans believe they have a chance and they will keep fighting. China is afraid of exactly this and of exactly what will happen if the new Dalai Lama is much more outspoken about Chinese atrocities than the previous one. And if the Chinese economic machine slows down for a little while, as could happen, and as long as the Dalai Lama is free, it might create incredible unrest in Tibet that could overwhelm the Chinese Communist Party. And for an area that is extremely strategically important to China, that is a very dangerous situation. But I want to ask you, do you believe that Tibet could ever reach autonomy again? Do you believe that the dream of a free Tibet that people in Tibet see, do you think that's a reality in any way, shape, or form? Let me know in the comment section down below. Other than that, guys, let me know what I should make the video on next. I will see you for the next episode, and to all of you, a secular pranam.